Hi, Lee.
Hello.
How you doing?
Doing great. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, this is going to be a lot of fun. For the listener, I met you. I've seen you around the gym for a while.
Right.
And once I thought about this podcast, I thought you'd be a great guest to have with your, I really enjoy talking to guys your age because life is no longer theoretical.
Right.
It's practical and you've lived it.
Right.
And so when I talk to someone in their 20s, even 30s, there's still a lot of theory. I think this, I think that, maybe you'll do this. But once you hit almost 70 and beyond, it's, I did this.
Right.
And now it can be more reflective on life.
Right.
Obviously, I like both perspectives, but I enjoy talking to guys your age because it's more reflection than it is just theory. And so the point of this is to get an oral biography of your life. And then in talking about your life, I'm sure there's things that you're going to bring up that we're going to dial in on. And just from the conversations I've had, I know you have a lot of wisdom you've picked up along the ways. So I'm excited to get into that. But normally I start at the beginning of your life, but I want to let's talk about your injury first.
Sure.
Because that was pretty significant. So we talked in December and you're like, yeah, let's do it in January. And then month of January goes by and I was like, where did Lee go? Like, did he just quit working out? And then I call you and you're like almost dead. And I was like, what's going on? So let's go with, let's start there. Then we'll go back.
Yeah. Well, in light of your point, I will be 70 next month, and there's a lot of lessons learned. But on Christmas Eve, I was visiting my daughter, and she's got a beautiful home on Dash Point that overlooks the ocean, but it's up on a hill, a high hill. It's a 3-story home, and her husband's a physician, and she's a federal prosecutor, so they've done really well. And we were having Christmas Eve dinner, and I parked down on the beach, and I was driving my son, and my wife was taking her parents home, and so he's like 29, and they said, let's just take the shortcut down the hill. And because I came up around on a road. And so I went down the shortcut, but I only got a few feet and I started to lose my balance. And I saw my son's horrified face and he reached out to try and stop me, but he'd have went with me if he'd grabbed me. So it's a good thing he didn't. And I went down this hill and off a cliff. And I guess it was Mission Impossible stunt-worthy Tom Cruise amazing. I don't remember any of it except the beginning. And I woke up in Tacoma General Hospital, and I had a massive concussion with brain bleeding, but I fractured 4 vertebrae, broke my right ankle, broke my left MCL, and fortunately, my daughter's husband is a physician, and he came down and stabilized me, I guess, till the end.
You don't remember any of that part?
Nothing. It's probably good that I don't, because it would probably be a horrific memory. I just remember the beginning of the fall, and then waking up at Tacoma General. But he got me stabilized, and then that put me in kind of a spot because I am a National Masters Physique champion, and I became that last April, and I had planned to defend my title last week, as it happens.
Did you go?
But I knew waking up for the hospital, that's not going to happen. And I ended up having spinal fusion surgery. The guy was amazing in January, on January 17th. And then I started back to the gym on March 14th. So I had about 3 months between the accident and going back to the gym, which was far sooner than they would have predicted. But the surgeon he was a lifter, jacked, understood completely. And they go in through your throat and they move your esophagus and move your trachea. And they put metal plates on your vertebrae and screw them in. So I've got all this metal in my body now. And I can tell it's different. But what an amazing thing. You know, we give medicine a lot of grief.
Yes.
But what he was able to do is remarkable. So I'm well ahead of schedule in terms of a comeback. There's things I can't do. And they didn't even diagnose my shoulder. It's all ripped up. But we'll get there. But I'm very encouraged by
You're encouraged by what?
I'm very encouraged by just what I've been able to do so far.
Yeah.
And I'm really pleased. So I don't know if I'll compete again. I might. We'll see how it goes. But I'll certainly, at the age of 70, I'll be far ahead of most people my age, and that's something.
Yeah, I mean, I would say personally, you've been inspirational to me.
Oh, thank you.
Even before you're just seeing you come in, the physique that you had, because you're maintaining off season. What was your body?
Yeah, that was the thing is I got really comfortable at about 10 pounds over my competition weight, which was still probably 10 or 11% body fat.
Yeah.
And it was very comfortable. And I was like going, in fact, I recently went back and looked at some of the December pre-accident videos on Instagram where I would wear a tank top. And I'm going, that guy can kill it. And I'm like, I got to be that guy again, because right now I'm 50% maybe there, but there's a lot of work to be done. And
Yeah.
the challenge now is you get 3 months of absolute inactivity. You gain fat, you lose muscle. So now I have, the sarcopenia is a thing. And so now I have to recomposition as opposed to bulk or cut. It's like lose the fat and gain back the muscle, which is pretty tricky. But, I'm pretty much ahead of the game. And it was funny how I got a hold of the surgeon. The surgeon is this amazing. He's probably the best surgeon on the West Coast. And he's got people. They take care of his correspondence, it's everything. So I call his office because I want to know, is it okay to go back to the weight room? And I call his office and I'm on hold for like an hour. And all I wanted was, can you give me his email? I just want to try and and so I couldn't get them. I couldn't get anything. I went to Instagram. And I follow him on Instagram and I instant messaged him. He got back to me within 2 hours. And he said, yeah, go ahead. You can, he says, just don't do anything overhead. Keep it really light. And so that was, I thought that was funny. Now you get your doctors through Instagram.
Yeah. No, that's super interesting. But yeah, even your recovery process, the fact that you're already back in the gym this early, like most people, just that injury alone would have taken them out. They'd still be depressed. I'm sure you had some dark moments.
Yeah, but honestly, it was disappointing more than anything because I was in such good shape. I was like, oh God, but I don't really do the depression thing because I've had enough psychological training, and counseling and therapy. I mean, all that stuff that I really know that's a waste of time. I spent maybe a minute feeling sorry for myself, and then I went, okay. In fact, when I woke up I was on a gurney going to the MRI because they were looking every hour at my brain because if there's brain bleeding, I was in trouble.
Yeah.
And I woke up on the gurney being rolled, and I went, oh, this is inconvenient. So I was even cracking myself up. I'm like going, oh God. But then I thought, these people are trying to save my life, so I better work with them.
Yeah.
But I was like, the very next day I did an Instagram reel and I was all narcotics up and everything. And even then I was saying, I'll be back in the weight room by March. I think March 1st, I said. It wasn't quite that soon, but it was my desire right then. Let's go back to work. Let's get back to it. You haven't lost everything. And I didn't even know how bad I was at that point. And I was hoping I wouldn't have to have surgery, but I'm glad I did.
Yeah. When you have something like that, surgery is.
They probably said your spine would collapse if you don't do this. So I was like, oh, I guess a second opinion really isn't necessary.
Yeah.
And my son-in-law, he was saying, probably a good idea, get the surgery. So
yeah. All right. Well, let's now rewind back to the beginning of your life.
Yeah, there's been several. I was born in Sioux City, Iowa, but my folks moved to Chicago before I was a year old. And my father was a fairly prominent high school basketball coach and a biology teacher in Illinois. And we moved around a lot in the Chicago area, and I went to a lot of schools. But the thing about it was we weren't rich, certainly was on a teacher's salary, but I had a lot of experiences. I got to meet the Chicago Bears, and I got to meet a lot of college basketball coaches who were courting my father because they wanted his players. And I got to go down to the Chicago Cubs dugout and hang. I wanted to be a great athlete. But my father was like 5'10". My mother was 5 foot nothing and 90 pounds. So I had no real ability. I had skills because I had a ball in my crib. I had all kinds of ball skills, but I had no talent. And so that wasn't going to be a
pause
career.
there. What's the difference between talent and skill?
Skills was something I could develop by practice. I couldn't. Talent is jumping high.
Okay.
Skills is practicing at jumping.
So I would probably use the word genetic.
Okay, yeah, it's genetic. Now where I did have talent, which the only area that I probably had talent in was music. I was extremely gifted, and I was born with perfect pitch and the ability to play anything I heard by ear. So by the time I was 6 years old, I was like in clubs and stuff. I mean, honestly, and my folks were kind of exploiting this, but that created some psychological problems because by the time I was 10 years old, I didn't know that I wasn't supposed to be an adult. So I never cried, so I developed a nervous twitch, and they sent me to the shrink, and they said
At 10 years old.
At 10 years old, and as I was a child prodigy, and so
What instrument?
piano and keyboards, and they sent me to the shrink, and the shrink said, "All right, parents, back off," where they caught my mother was so funny. She goes, "Well, he acted just like a 10-year-old," and the shrink goes, "How old is he, Mrs. Witt?" He's 10. Yeah, so I'm sorry.
That's fine.
So that was kind of revelatory, and they did back off, but we all want what we can't have. I wanted to be a great athlete, and instead I was a very good musician, but I didn't pursue it until later in life the way that I probably could have. But I ended up, it was a fairly unremarkable childhood beyond that, and I went.
Well, before we get to high school and beyond or college, I like to delve a little bit more into childhood, just so people can see, like,
Sure.
we all I mean, it sounded like you had loving parents.
Yeah, oh yeah, they did the best they could.
And one common thing I'm finding is there's no perfect parents.
No.
Right? So many people, as they become adults, they go back and they try to demonize their childhood. It's like, there is no such thing as perfect parents.
No.
Are there some traumatic, like more than traumatic experiences you can have that are unhealthy? For sure, right? If your parents are into drugs and stuff like that, that's not recommended. But as far as ideal, perfect childhood, that's just not a thing.
Yeah, no, I have no complaints with my parents. They did the best they could. There's no handbook for this, and they got married young. My mom was 18 when she got married, and my dad was 21, and that's the kind of way it was back then, the World War II generation.
So when you're in middle school, were you still practicing like piano and all that stuff, or?
I was mostly into sports when I started. By the time I was like 7th, 8th, 9th grade, what we'd call middle school, I wasn't doing a lot of it. I would do a little bit just because it was in me to do. But I was busy playing football and basketball and tennis and baseball, and I really wanted to be great at those things. Now, when I got into high school, I kind of got back more into the performing thing because you can get girls. Who knew music? But I'm so stupid. I was so dumb. I was like, I always thought that, well, they should love me for me and not just because I have talent on the piano. It's like, then I got to be about 30 and I went, that's kind of how it works, bud.
Took you 20 years to figure that out.
Yeah, that's kind of how it works. They're not going to love you for you because that's part of you and that's what they're going to, oh, okay. But it was interesting, and I was popular as a kid. I was a class president. I didn't even run for class president in my high school, but I could speak to people in large assemblies. And
well, it sounds like your dad was a pretty good example.
Yeah, he was a really smart guy. My mom was not a brain surgeon by any means. Her IQ was not phenomenal, but my dad was probably a genius. And so I had it coming from both angles. But
yeah, because there's some nature and there's some nurture,
yeah,
right?
Yeah.
When you have a parent that you can aspire to and be inspired by, that shows you what's possible, whether you consciously know it or not.
Right.
And then you obviously worked at it as well, which also elevated your ability.
Yeah, and what I learned from that is in having kids of my own, it's make sure they have the opportunities to pursue what they want to pursue, but don't push them. Yeah. They'll figure it out. If I'd have been left to my own talent, I probably would have been Billy Joel or Elton John by now. But I was pushed. You got to do this. And if we went somewhere, oh, you got to perform. And I'm like, and I can remember being up in Wisconsin. My dad would go up to go fishing in the summers, and they'd fight the local bar, and I'd be hustling free beers for him because I could, I was like 12 years old and I looked 8. They're like, this kid's phenomenal.
Yeah, you would have been on American Idol back then.
Yeah, it's crazy. And
how do you feel about music now?
I enjoy it, and we'll get into that probably some because my current wife, I met her as a karaoke host. She was and she's a CPA, an accountant, and actually a member of Mensa. She's a genius herself. But she had a 4-octave vocal range, and we kind of got together through just music, and we started a band when we were in our late 40s when we got together. It's been about 20 years.
All right, we're jumping ahead there.
We're jumping ahead, yeah.
But so music still has been a big part of your life.
It's been huge, yeah. And performing in my later years, and then we stopped the band about 5 years ago. I didn't want to be 65 and on a stage somewhere playing songs that nobody even remembers. So yeah.
All right, so another pivotal point in people's life is, to me, I think it's that time when you leave your parents' home, so late teens, early 20s. So when you were, I'm assuming you graduated around 18?
Yeah.
Did you have like some desire of what you wanted to be, or what your grand plan for the future, or kind of what was your mindset at that time?
I didn't really know what I wanted to be, but I got a political science degree on a pre-law curriculum thinking, well, I'll just go to law school because that sounds like something I should do. And then it would get prestige and whatnot. But my dad dropped me off at the dorm at 18, shook my hand, said, good luck, son. I hope it works out for you. And I paid my entire way through college. And I'll tell you a little bit about that too, because that was character building. But I was good. I was glad to get out of the house, and I was glad to get off on my own. My folks fought a lot by that time. They ended up getting divorced, and but it was good to just get out.
I think about young adults now, and you can help give me some perspective on this. I feel like this generation of young adults is even more confused than other generations, but I haven't been around for those other generations. And every generation always says we have it worse. Do you feel like the youth today, 18 to 25, are just as lost and confused as they were before? Or is it more so now than it was?
I think it's tougher today in some ways because of all of the social media pressure. And when I was growing up, there wasn't such a thing as career fulfillment. It wasn't even a term. I mean, we were just taught, you get a job, you take care of your family. It's going to suck.
A lot of
and then
duty.
you enjoy your free time.
Yeah.
And that was how it went. And if you got a job you loved, oh, that was a great blessing.
Yeah.
But we didn't think in terms of, oh, I gotta love my job. It's like, no, you get your job, and so I thought, well, what would give me money and prestige? I thought, well, going to law school. So I got a political.
So you didn't necessarily want to be a lawyer. You just thought like.
No, I was thinking, well, I don't want to be a cop. No, police, a fireman. No, I want to be a teacher. No, not really. As it was, I ended up going to graduate school in counseling. I got 30 hours worth of master's degree in counseling. But then I also decided I didn't want to listen to people's problems for the rest of my life either. So, but I learned a ton.
We'll get into that. But just dialing back in, it's like in today's world, we are telling young people to pursue happiness so much. And I think it's hard to pursue happiness when you haven't lived enough life experience.
Yeah.
Right? Because you don't know what you want. You don't know what you're good at. You're probably not really good at anything unless you excelled at a sport or instrument or fine arts.
Yeah.
But I think one of the issues with young people today is there's too many proverbial boys living in their mom's basement.
Yeah, I think that's very true.
Right? When you were 18, you weren't paralyzed with the unknown. You're like, I'm just going to go live life.
We're going to go to college and get it on. Get on with it.
Where now it's like people are so paralyzed with the future, so paralyzed with what do I want? What's happiness? And it's like, dude, you don't know what you want.
Right.
Because you haven't done anything worth thinking about or living, right? If you're just playing video games all day or you're just doing nothing, you're not moving.
You've hit on something really important, I think, and that people don't think about also is to figure out what your talent is or what you're good at to the extent that you can. You don't always know until you're in your mid-20s or whatever, but when you find that out, try then to exploit that in the service of other people, and that will get you paid. It's a lot of guys think, well, I don't want to work for the man. And I want to work up for myself. I don't want people telling me what to do. Well, you're going to have customers no matter what you do. And I tell you what.
You're always working for someone.
Yeah, exactly. And So I do feel for kids now. I watch my own son. He's just amazingly jacked, incredible. Could be a professional dancer. He's that good. Hip hop. I mean, incredible stuff. He doesn't have a girlfriend. You know, he doesn't date. I don't know when I haven't seen him date. He's like 29. And I'm like going, how do you do that? I was a hormonal maniac from the age of 18 on. I mean, it's just like I could, I made stupid errors with just because women, yes, go. And kids now, they're not even dating. They don't talk. They're online a lot. And I'm not saying it's better or worse. I just think that it is, kids have so many choices now that we didn't have. That makes it even more confusing and tougher. Like, which direction do I go? And do I get an online business, or I go work for Amazon, or do I, go to the Boeing company, or what do I become a teacher, or there's so many options. It's like, and if you haven't really figured out what you're good at, it's really hard to make a decision.
Yeah, but the important thing is to do something.
Do something, yes. Get out of the basement, get out of mom's basement, and go get out.
And I think that's the issue. It's like, okay, I can acknowledge that it is harder, even from when I was a young adult. It is harder, but you still have to do something, right?
Yeah.
And I think that's one of the pieces that we're missing with these young people.
And it should suck. Initially, like I mentioned, when I went to Illinois State University, my summer job, which I was fortunate to get, was 84 hours a week at the Green Giant Company, harvesting peas and corn, in Belvedere, Illinois. For 3 summers, it was that's 12 hours a day, 7 days a week. But it was great money because you got 40 hours of overtime. I mean, it was incredible for a college kid. But it was horrible as migrant workers and guys that were just out of San Quentin, and it was awful. And occasionally I'd pick up a piano bar on the weekend, so I'd work 100 hours that week.
Yeah.
But when you went back to school, it was fantastic because you all of a sudden you're just surrounded by women and food and kids and you. What do you mean? I got to go to classes for 15 hours this week? That's all? And you just go. College, yeah. I never wanted to leave.
You have the contrast because once you go do something hard, it doesn't mean you have to do it your whole life.
Right.
Just like my first job was stocking cigarettes. I don't know if my parents even know that, but I graduated high school and I was living with my sister because my parents were no longer in the country. So they moved. So I was living there with them with the summer, and I went around trying to get random jobs. Mm-hmm. And that was the only job I could get. Yeah. And did I enjoy it? No. But I did that for, 6 weeks, 8 weeks for the summer. You learn a lot, and like, man, I better make sure if I'm going to do something in life, it's not something that I hate, right?
Right.
And so it's a building block, right? I would never do that for a career, right? But I did the suck, and I realized like if I'm making sure I'm going to get a job that I enjoy, versus stocking cigarettes for 8 hours a day, 5 days a week.
And at that point in your life, did you feel like you had a whole lot of choices? Probably not. No. I mean, it's like, I have to do this now. I'm not always going to do it, but I need to do this now.
Yeah.
And then
I got to make some money as minimum wage. It wasn't
exactly.
I wasn't necessarily optimizing and happiness, but I went and did it just so I could feel like what it was like to go to work and learn some basic things like showing up and doing a good job and like, and I think again, young people today are afraid to do things even if it's uncomfortable or painful. So went to college, got your degree.
A political science degree. That's when I really got into weight training. When I was 18, that was 1972, and most people weren't doing it then. In fact, when I got to Illinois State.
Yeah, let's talk. What was fitness like back then? Was it just for athletes?
It was. Interestingly, it was probably a little broader than it is now. There was this President Kennedy had this Council on Physical Fitness back in the 60s, and they were encouraging kids, and they had like grade school physical fitness tests for kids, and it was really kind of pushed throughout the country, and not necessarily organized sports.
That was after World War II. We still believed in having strong, fit men.
Yeah, and it was a thing. But when I got to Illinois State, they had 2 universal gym machines, no free weights. But by the time I was a senior, they had a ton of stuff, and Nautilus had started, and it came in, and by the time I was a senior, I actually was third in the Illinois State Collegiate Powerlifting Championships. And the 2 guys that beat me were on Dianabol, doing drugs. And that was a thing back then. It was legal and normal. but I didn't want to do it yet because I hadn't like even maxed out.
So you enjoyed lifting even way back then.
Oh yeah, it just was transformative. The first time I went, oh my God, because I'd always been small too, and I didn't want to be small. I mean, I was, it was great to be in sports and everybody loved the underdog, and I was always the underdog, so I had a lot of attention and that was great. But I wanted to be big, I wanted to be strong, I wanted to be a man, and because men were evaluated back then a lot by just physical prowess.
Yeah.
So I got into it heavy and I never stopped. And it really has been a foundational piece of my life. And
What was your max bench back then? Was that a thing?
the most I ever got, I got 290 strict when I was in my mid to late 20s. But I was up around 170 pounds, about as heavy as I ever got. Right now I'm coming in about 140. And
So when I was 17, didn't understand nutrition. My 17 senior in high school, weighed 135. I benched 255.
no, that's great.
And then when I was just out of the military at 22, that was probably when I was at my strongest.
Mhm.
I weighed like 140-ish, and I benched 330.
Oh, that's great.
I'll never do that again now.
Well,
But like I relate to you in that being, I've never like felt bad about being short. I just knew like, hey, I'm short. I accept that. How do I make up the difference? Just be faster and stronger.
Yeah.
Because I played sports too in high school.
exactly.
And the coach would joke, but also was serious. Like, if you can beat Josiah around the track, you don't have to practice today. Well, guess what? No one's beating me around the track. So like, I knew I wasn't the tallest, but I knew I could out strength anyone pound for pound, and I could out work anyone pound for pound.
It's like the treadmill test. You may have heard it. I think Will Smith said this. Some other people that said that you may be bigger than me, you may be faster than me, you may be smarter than me, you may be stronger than me, you may be more talented than me, you may be better looking than me, you may have me in 9 out of 10 things. But I guarantee you one thing: if you and I get on a treadmill, you're going to get off first, or I'm going to die.
Yeah.
I'm not afraid to die on the treadmill. So that means basically, just if you're willing to outwork everybody, you know, you could probably do pretty well.
Yeah.
And it's a good attitude to take on.
So maybe we'll talk about this a little later, but you talked about how you were so hormonal raged, especially when it came to women. Now that I'm a little older and now I'm looking outside of myself and my family, I am trying to put a pulse on just people, and especially younger people in general. And one common thing I'm finding is women are finding a hard time finding mature men.
Yeah, yeah.
And so at some point you hit maturity, and maybe we'll talk about that. But like, how can we get younger men how do we get them to mature faster? I know the brain for men doesn't really hit till 25, but do we just say, hey, sorry, women, you gotta just, it sucks? Or can we as older men try to help intervene with these younger guys and be like, hey, let's help you develop faster so that you're not going and making all these silly mistakes, or that you can actually go find a quality woman.
Yeah.
Versus get married, get divorced 3 years later because you literally weren't mature enough.
I
don't know if you've thought about that.
I think a lot of it is just the social skills that we're not asking our young people really to have, because if they're dating on Tinder or whatever these apps are and stuff, they don't have to go out and actually talk to somebody. Now, when I was 20, 21, we'd go out to a club or a bar or whatever, and you had to actually go up and introduce yourself. And
you had to get rejected. You had to in person. It's very different doing something in person live.
Exactly. And for me, fortunately, the fear of rejection was much less than the fear of not knowing what would have happened had I tried. So I remember being 19 and calling up the hottest girl on campus at Illinois State University. I said, I don't have a prayer, but I did it. And she said, yes. And I said, oh my God, I don't know what are we going to do? I got tickets to Harry Chapin concert. You want to go? You know, it's if you just put yourself out there. And I've been rejected, I mean, of course, but you never win unless you put yourself in the game. And that at 19, what a lesson! I was like, wow, I can make this happen. And it's just so. Fear basically is a conversation we have with ourselves about what we think is going to happen, what we think is we're going to know.
Yeah.
It's a perception of an unknown threshold. We don't know what we're capable of, but we're afraid of all these different things because we run it through our head that it's going to be awful. And basically, the way through fear is through focus. And focus happens when clarity, concentration, and action converge in a present moment to produce a result. And so what that means is basically you get into a flow state and you're actually doing the thing to the point where you forgot you were afraid. I could go, what do I need to get done? Focus on that. You know, these three guys are coming at me. Oh my God, what am I going to do? You know, I can get paralyzed, or I can go, what do I need to get done? It always comes back to that question. What's the target? Target's this guy's eyes, this guy's knees, this guy's groin. You know, and when you do it, when you're in it, you're not afraid anymore. You know, and it's just the way through fear is through focus. And I learned this basically from training with Navy SEALs, and it's amazing what you can do if you just figure out. And they go, well, how do you get there? You go, always go back to the target. What's your target? And that means you have to have a clear target. That means you have to be clear on what you're trying to do. And so I got to fight these three guys. So I got to, okay, immediate target, eyes, throat, groin, whatever it is. But then you're in the moment. Mm-hmm. And it's people get so afraid and wrapped up about stuff that doesn't even matter, you know. And if they can practice on those things, moving through it, and pretty soon you get to the point when you're my age, there's nothing. I mean, they said we're gonna go through your throat, move your trachea and your esophagus, and put a bunch of metal in your back, and I went, okay, fine. I mean, I wasn't even afraid. I mean, it's just you just go, oh, okay, that's the deal. And so what do I need to do? Well, I need to focus on getting enough water the night before, and then stopping completely, and I have to fast for this long, and I have to. So that's what I need to focus on and do, and get maybe a good night's sleep before the surgery. And yeah, you just do what you need to focus on, and that takes you completely out of the fear.
Yes, I mean, I have three boys, and one thing, even with my daughter, I'm trying to normalize failure. Mm-hmm. Yeah, normalize trying, and it's okay, because you think about how the education system works. So my kids are homeschooled, so we have a lot more.
Oh yeah, you know, yeah,
control over that. But it's like the way school works. If you don't get an A, you're a failure, and that's bad. And you're like, that's not how life works.
Right.
You're not graded.
Right.
It's either it worked or it didn't, and we don't celebrate trying. We celebrate you got an A or not.
Right.
If you didn't, that's bad. So I'm trying to slowly, it's more repetition, right? They see dad doing all this stuff. Okay, dad's doing it. Now let's go try it. So that's what I'm trying to just start normalizing that conversation. Like, it's okay to try. It's okay to fail. You don't have to get it right the first time.
Right.
And you actually usually don't.
Right.
Right. It's rare that you do. Because we always see the success. We always see the guy who starts a $1 billion company. What we don't realize is how many other things.
How long it took to get there.
Yeah. How many other things did he fail before you got to that point?
Yeah.
So I'm trying to normalize that now at their age, so that when the stakes are higher, they won't get so emotionally burnt down when it doesn't work out the first time.
Yeah. If you can teach effort like that's great, because that will pay off. And then just that not quit, kind of attitude. We're just like, it takes a lot of tries, and you get there eventually. Oh, this didn't work, and this didn't work. How about this?
Yeah, like my one son likes Steph Curry. Mm-hmm. And so there's a lot of things out there about Steph, but like breaking down how many threes does he practice, right?
Yeah.
Some outrageous number, like Tony Robbins did a whole breakdown of it. And it's like he has, for every three that he's made, right, in a game, he's shot like, for every three he makes, there's probably 10, at least 1,000 that he misses before he gets to that point. So it's just the volume, so much volume of trying, so that he is the greatest three-point shooter in the NBA. But he also has missed a lot of threes. He's also taken a lot of threes to get to that point. We see him making them, but we don't see the work that he did to get to that point.
Right.
So I try to have them, it's one thing saying it, but like, hey, here's a guy that you like. You want to be in the NBA. This is the work that he did to get to that point.
And Steph Curry wants to have the ball at the end of the game, because he's not afraid if he fails.
Right.
He knows there will be another time. And a lot of kids don't get that. It's like totally okay to want to have that responsibility at the end of the game, because you know that if you miss it, you get up the next day and you get back to work. If you make it, great. But a lot of people miss that. They're looking for that guy at the end of the game who really wants to step up. And there's, if you step up and you fail, well, good for you. I mean, I'll hit it the next time. But the world doesn't end.
Right.
You get criticized, and what a big deal. Love me, hate me, but don't ignore me.
Yeah.
It's just, yeah.
So, finished college. Now you're almost mid-20s. What's that?
Yeah,
thought process?
it was kind of wild. I got married and moved out here, and I've been married twice. We were married for 15 years, and I met her at Illinois State, and she was quite brilliant and did very, very well. We had no kids. We were married for 15 years, and she got a job out here at the University of Puget Sound, where she ended up being a dean for a while. Now she's back in the Midwest. But I came out and started working in a health club because I was just kind of following her, because I had a political science degree and 30 hours, 6 hours short of a master's in counseling. And I didn't want to stay and finish it. So I said, well, let's just go. And so I got a job at a health club. And then I started entrepreneuring, where I failed. A bunch of guys and me started a business college, and we actually were doing pretty well. We had 2 branch campuses in Tacoma and Kent. But there was a thing back in the 80s called home savings and loans. There were banks, and they all over the country, and they went belly up, and they had our receivables, and we filed Chapter 11, and we just couldn't make a go of it. But it was really working, and so it was kind of sad. But lessons learned. So I took what I knew from the business college in terms of computing skills and what we were teaching. I went, put me into the Boeing company. I went to a temporary agency, and because we sent a lot of our students in through them. And I said, send me out to Boeing. And she says, can you go Monday? I said, yeah. And so I went out there, basically doing like word processing, typing. I mean, honest to God. But they saw this crazy, intense dude who was emptying wastebaskets at the end of the day and going around, what do you need? And but by the end of the first week, the supervisor's going, you want to work here full time? And I go, yeah, but let's make sure that the temp agency gets at least a couple months worth of money first.
Oh, that's
and he's
nice.
like, yeah. So I started the Boeing company for $13,000.
What year is this?
This was 1986. 13.9, I think it was. But I knew if I got in the door, that's all I needed.
Right.
Well, 10 times that.
Yeah.
By the time.
And again, that's another principle that young people forget, is that a lot of them feel like my first job should pay me this outrageous amount. And it's like, no, dude, you have to.
And I have to get promoted within 6 months, and I have to get the premier project that everybody's craving.
And it's like, no, you not that you have to start at the bottom, but don't expect to be paid top dollar because based on your potential.
Yeah, exactly. You haven't done anything yet. And so it's actually better now. Kids have a lot more leverage now with all the different companies and what they know and what they know how to do.
Yeah, you can still get paid well, but don't expect to be paid what
they want an influential position within 6 months of being there, and they want to, why am I not lead on this project, and why am I not a supervisor yet, why am I not? It's like, well, you've only been here for a minute, and some of these people have been here for 30 years. And so I left in 2019, 5 years ago, after 33 years. I retired at 65, and it was a great run. I'm a little concerned about the Boeing company now for a variety of reasons.
Have they called you to come back?
I get calls from them. I've actually done a couple seminars, mostly personal development seminars for them, Zoom calls, mostly like in California and around there.
Because there's a few guys at the gym that have been tapped on the shoulder. Will you come back?
Yeah, they want to. And I'm not an engineer, but if you're a talented engineer, they'll take you back.
He said no. He's like, I don't like where you guys are right now.
Yeah,
and I can't stand behind the.
And apart from just having planes fall out of the sky, my heartburn with a lot of them too is, as a political scientist, I have problems with some of the political contributions they've made to people, and I was like, no, if you're going there, we're done. And I mean, so you're supporting insurrection? Okay, thank you, Boeing. No, it's like, and so people will go, well, you should stay in your lane. I go, that is my lane. I am a political scientist. It's like, you don't even have a conversation with me about that. I will crush you. Oh, but it is funny. And so when I moved out here, I caught on with Boeing, and then I turned that into a career. But I didn't want to move like high up into management because I just didn't want, because they own you 24/7 if you do that. I knew I wanted to write books. I knew I wanted to play music. I knew I wanted to continue being an athlete. And so I played the game. Corporate America is a giant board game. If you get emotionally invested, you're going to lose.
Yeah.
So you have to just be able to take a bunch of grief.
How did you know that it was a game to begin with?
Was
that intuition that you had?
Yeah, I mean, it took me.
Because not a lot of people understand, like, this is a game.
Yeah, and a lot of it's emotional intelligence. You just read the room and you go, okay, oh, these guys are trying to move up the corporate ladder. These people are just trying to make a living.
How old were you when you started at Boeing?
How old was I? I was 32. And, but I picked it up really quickly. And, if you just go in with a good attitude and you're positive and you're trying to solve problems and you get slid up. And I was able to work very quickly. By the time I left, I was the chief of staff for the vice president of research and technology. And I would have to I'd have like 30 minutes to make a complete pitch that my vice president would have to take to another vice president on why these rivets were failing or something. So like, I'm an animal. I'm on the phone and I'm just going, listen, this isn't me talking. This is the vice president. I need you to give me 3 bullet points about why such and such is happening at such and such time, and I need that in 20 minutes. And they're like, okay, and I'd get this stuff and I'd run it off, and he'd run off. It was insane pressure if you were emotionally invested, and I just wasn't. I was like, what are you gonna do? Fire me? I'm the best thing you've got.
Yeah. So you did there's a fine line there because you want to make sure you do a good job, which I know you would, but some people have the mindset of, who cares? Therefore, I'm not going to do a good job.
The difference being, if your name is on it. So if pride be a sin, I'm going to spend the rest of eternity in hell. So I'm proud of my work. If I've signed the paper, it's going to be the best I can do. So even if I wasn't emotionally involved, I was like going, my name's on this. So the people that don't care are going, I don't care, my name's on it, now you do whatever you're going to do. So I was able to find that balance between doing the right thing, always ethical, yet at the same time, you get it done. And I had a reputation for he'll get it done. He'll just get it.
I mean, there's that saying, it's not personal, it's just business.
Yeah.
And that can be seen a few different ways, because it's like, well, life is personal, because life is people to people, even if you work within a business.
Yeah.
And so that saying is two-edged, right?
Yeah.
Because you'll stab someone in the back. Oh, it's not personal. It's like, bro, you literally just stabbed me in the back.
Yeah. And if you're emotionally intelligent, you're not going to do that.
Yeah.
And because it's going to come back and haunt you. And I've seen so many people who burn bridges and they end up, and I was that way. I could hold a grudge. If somebody came to me, 3 years later,
you remember.
Someone just asked me about you. What do you think I told them? And so I'm not beyond that. I'm not above that. But that's part of the game, and I played it as well as you could possibly play it. Without an engineering degree, I was able to move up about as far as you could go, and not being a bean counter. Because you got engineers and you got bean counters. And they're the ones who end up as president of the CEO of the company.
Well, now it's lawyers that are CEOs.
Yeah, there's not as much of that in Boeing. But they're definitely busy.
Right now.
They're keeping them busy. I wouldn't want to be there for all the money in China.
So one thing and we're going to talk more about your hobbies, but I like the fact that a lot of men will put everything towards work and sacrifice everything else. Their family won't have time for other things. And you, at a young age, made time for those other things. You said, no, I'm not going to be defined by me working at Boeing. That is a thing that I do because I want to pay the bills.
Right.
But I'm also going to pursue all these other passions. Because I talk to men my age, and a lot of them, they don't have hobbies. They don't have
Yeah, it's
things
sad.
they do on the side. They don't have other stuff. And so, like my buddy who works at Meta, he works 70, 80 hours a week. And when that's not going well, he has nothing else.
Yeah.
And if his marriage isn't going well, he's got nothing else. And it's like, well, maybe you should try to find other things that you can pursue outside of that. So let's get into that of these other passions that you picked up.
If you are what you do, when you don't, you aren't. You know, so it's like these guys who just throw their entire life into work. I understand, and a lot of them are very successful. But I had this conversation in the hospital on Christmas Day. I woke up and I went, "Wow, I've been defining myself as a Masters Physique champion. What if I can't be that anymore? My plan is to be, but who am I then? Well, okay, you're still a musician. You were a corporate guru. You speak to corporations and companies and clubs and associations, and so I had to run down this list of things that I could still do, but it was tough for me because I always have seen myself as an athlete first. That physical presence was something.
And you kept that up your whole adult life?
All my life, yeah, I never stopped lifting. I had pleurisy pericarditis at the same time once a few years ago. And that set me back a little bit. I couldn't lift for a few weeks, and it might even have been a month. But and I had pneumonia a couple of times. Which
when did you switch from powerlifting to physique?
Well, I'd always done I'd always done them kind of complementary. I knew that I wasn't going to be a great bodybuilder, at least early on, or didn't have the genes for it. So I thought, well, how strong can I get? And once I kind of maxed out there, I went back to just training to see. Well, part of my own philosophy is just how can you reach the upper limits of your genetic potential, physically, intellectually, emotionally, artistically, and all these areas. How can you get to the ceiling? You won't hit the top, but how far can you get? So I always just thought, well, what could I do physically? And then I watched like the 4 best athletes from my high school die, heart disease and whatnot, and they were all in their 60s. And I got to start climbing this ladder. I kept getting good or better while everybody else was dropping off and, giving into the sloppy indifference of old age, which isn't going to happen. And I went, wow, there's not that many guys around now. What could I do if I actually competed? How would I do against? And some of them are monsters and some of them are badass. And it's really interesting to see. But I thought, well, let's just give this a run. And the first year I competed, I took a second.
What year was that?
And that was 2022.
So you didn't even compete?
Not in physique, no.
Really? So that's something you didn't pick up till?
No, until I thought now and they created this category as a bodybuilder. See, my legs are weak. I mean, I built my calves to some extent, but I was never going to be a classic traditional bodybuilder because I just wasn't a monster. But they come up with this category called physique where you wear board shorts. Oh my God, nobody gets to see my thighs? I'm in. So, and that's a way for them to make money, and they have these different categories now for women. They've got wellness and all kinds of things. And, but it's great for people who want to compete and want to take care of themselves. And I went, I can do this. And I took a second. And then last year I took a first. And, it's really great because it's like a lifetime achievement award. More than just the winning the competition. It's like, you put 50 years into this. You put a half a century into this. Here, have a trophy.
It's not about that one-time event because it's everything that took to get to that.
Yeah, it's 50 years. And learning how to dial in the nutrition, which is most people's problem. I mean, you see guys go to the gym for 10 years consistently and their body never changes. And they got the workouts in, but they're not handling the nutrition. And maybe they're fine the way they are. I'm not saying they shouldn't be any different. But if they want to change, they want to improve, once you dial that nutrition in and you get that kind of handled, it's amazing what can happen. And yeah, I was surprised. I surprised myself. And one of the mistakes I made was, as a former football player and big, wannabe big guy, I would watch my weight drop. I go, I can't get any lighter than this. A man doesn't weigh this, and then it would drop more. And then my coaches would go, keep dropping. Yeah, I'm going, but chicks can beat me up now. You know, keep dropping. And I drop and I drop and I go, wow, I'm getting diced. And then pretty soon, I'm an anatomy chart at a school. They'll pay me to come in. You know, and I by the time I was 123 pounds the year I took second, 123 pounds.
Yeah.
But I was diced. Oh my God. I mean, I was paper thin skin. The next year I was 128. I wanted to be like 130, but I won that one. And but I was always afraid to lose more weight because I just kept thinking, a man weighs more than this. I'm not a man if I'm like, well, no, you are. And you look pretty good. Now you just gained the weight back, you know, but it was interesting because I never took myself down far enough to see what I could really do. So if I'm coaching somebody else and they have that issue, and it's an issue with women, it's the other way around. They're afraid to gain weight,
Yeah.
and we're afraid to lose weight. And so it's been interesting coaching athletes the last couple of years too, and that's been something that's a little bit new for me. But yeah, I'll always define myself first as an athlete, and it's really good to get back into the gym and start thinking of myself that way.
Yeah, and Tony Robbins, he wrote a book. He's written several books.
Yeah, I've read a few of them.
One of them was Life Force, where he talks about the concept of you got to be the CEO of your health.
Right.
Right. And so there is a lot of data out there. There's a lot of people in the health space now. Sometimes it's confusing because there's competing thoughts and competing ideas. But at least one of the messages, you need to be responsible for you.
Right.
You got to take care of you, no matter if you're vegan, meat, whatever. Most of them are at least saying you need to take matters into your own hands.
Yeah.
You can't just rely on someone else. You can't rely on the doctor. You can't rely on big pharma. You can't rely on agriculture.
Right.
You got to look into this for yourself so that you have a better understanding of food and exercise.
Exactly. And in my coaching practice, I do two things right off the bat. I have people clarify their values. And I always recommend that their top value is health, because without that, most of the other values don't matter. If you're in an iron lung, it doesn't matter, you know, what else is going on. But once we get past,
See that guy recently died?
yes, yeah,
That's crazy. Just I could only think about his life for like 5 minutes because it just hurt to think about.
Imagine that, and yet we take our health for granted, and it's like,
And he did that for his whole life.
That's where you live. Yeah.
Like I was just literally, I had to stop thinking about it because I was just like, the dude literally just had his head, and he somehow.
That's it. Yeah. And people used to live that way. Now we've got at least got ventilators and stuff that we didn't. But it's crazy. And so I think, you know, people ask me, what do you coach, or what if you could tell young people one thing? You know, I would say, well, get clear on your values, the things that are important to you.
So how do they know what's important to them?
That's a great question. You have to watch what you do, because your values are reflected in what you do. Now you can say, I'm all about health, but then you're eating this crap and you're not working out. No, you're about something else. So first take an inventory of what you are actually doing. Those are the things that are important to you. Now, what would you like to be about? What would be important? Now for me, and your values can change. It can change over time and evolve. But for me, it's health in order of importance: health, intelligence, humor, generosity, toughness, and beauty. Yeah, health, intelligence, generosity, toughness, beauty, and humor's in there third.
Yeah.
But people go, well, why is that so important? Because, you know, people talk about there's no willpower anymore because of decision fatigue. You know, I have to make all these decisions. I don't have to make any decisions. I just weigh them against my values. Is this a healthy choice? Is it an intelligent choice? Does it contribute some lighthearted humor to the world? Is it come from a generous spirit? Does it make me tougher, which makes me less of a burden to other people? Does it contribute to beauty? People go, well, beauty, that's a superficial value. Is it? You know, beauty inspires me. When I read a piece of beautiful literature, I want to be a better writer. Beautiful music, I want to be a better musician. I see a beautiful body, I want to have a better body. Beauty inspires us to be better. And people go, oh, beauty, that's just superficial stuff. No, it's not superficial at all. You know, if you're not taking care of yourself and you're just a sloppy, you know, person, you're not going to inspire me.
Right.
You know, but I see a young, fit guy like you, they go, that makes me want to be better. I want to keep up. You know, and it's interesting that people, if they just got clear on that, they wouldn't have such a difficult time making decisions. And then eventually we get into principles. And those are the things that you stand for. And for me, principles are like, this one's a tough one, but I only do things that strengthen me. I do nothing that weakens me. That takes a lot off the table. I mean,
It's almost
no junk food, no booze, no nothing, because that weakens me. So you don't do that. And then other things like I make my capabilities exceed my limitations, which is important as you get older, because you do get limited. And people say, "Oh, I don't have any limitations." Yeah, you will. I show up and bring it every day. I lead by example. And this one, I've got 6 in total, but the 5th one, this is really important too. And is I differentiate myself from other people by placing responsibility for feelings and behavior where they belong. I differentiate myself from you, and I'm giving you your feelings and your behavior, and I am not responsible for those. I am responsible for my feelings and my behavior. So you try and guilt trip me with what you're doing, or you try and make me responsible, we're not having it. And that will save you so much energy and time if you get that right, because I'm responsible for what I'm doing over here. And you're responsible for what you're doing over there. I didn't cause you. If I hit you with a ball bat, then that's different. And you're going to feel, that's my fault. But if you feel neglected, or you feel guilty, or you feel, that's on you, and when you get that, that's a mental health construct that is very difficult to beat. It really is. And which is why I didn't spend any time feeling sorry for myself when I got hurt, or it's like, this is my responsibility. I fell down that hill. People, are you going to sue? I go, no, I'm not going to sue. It's like, I'm the idiot that fell down the hill. I am responsible. And then my last one, I try and make my energy bigger than my circumstances. And I don't always succeed at that, because as you get older, your energy you got to guard it a little bit more. But when people get clear on their values and their principles, decisions become easy. Life becomes easy. And you might change. You might go, well, I don't like that value anymore. It is a little, and you can change. But man, people go, oh, I just get so tired. I don't know what to do. And I go, well, spend time watching what you do. Those are your values, how you behave. So those are the things that are valuable to you, because that's what you're doing. You're doing what's valuable to you, or you wouldn't do it. So if you want to change that, decide who you want to be. Decide what you want to do. Decide where you want to go. It's up to you. It's a beautiful thing about life, is that we get to choose who we are. We've got our own genetic issues, but once you're beyond that, it's totally up to us how we build ourselves, what we study, what we do, who we associate with. We have so many choices that people in other countries don't even have, and yet we'll squander it because, the new video game or whatever just got all my attention. And it's just, okay, well, that's your value. That's what you value. You value video games. Okay, you get to do that. But don't come to me when I just read a thing. I love David Goggins, but
get hard.
And crazy David. He just had a thing on Instagram where he said, you don't want to get to be 70 years old and think back and go, I didn't do this and I didn't do that, and he's right. You don't want to get to be 70 years old and not have lived to some extent. But I would also challenge him to say, you can get to be 70 and there's still stuff to do. It's not over. It doesn't have to be over when you're 65 or 70. And I see a lot of people, retire at 65 or whatever. They're just kind of like laying around, go, we'll put the game on. And I love to watch sports and I do things, but you can live your own life and do stuff till you're done. I was almost done on Christmas Eve. Thank goodness I wasn't, because there's more to do. But I can look back and I can go, wow, no, I did some cool stuff. Met some cool people. And the band was a whole other thing. That was just sick. That was my wife, I had a lot of talent, and I was very blessed. And we got together, we were sitting in with other bands about 20 years ago. But we're doing a lot of classic rock, and stuff. And my wife got really tired of that. I grew up in Chicago with a lot of R&B funk, and she was all about funk. And so we started our own thing. We were horrible. Oh my God. We were so bad. We couldn't even end a song on time. It was just, but what lessons? And so we'd go down and play these horrible toilets on 99 down Pacific Avenue, and people with no teeth, and it was just, oh God, it was just awful. But we had a plan. And we had a business plan, and we knew what we wanted to do. And we knew there were no show bands, really Vegas type show bands in the Seattle area. And I put 3 attractive women, talented women out front, 4 of us guys behind them. I hired a college professor to come in and teach me how to sequence music, which means putting strings and horns and things in the background. So I don't have to hire musicians. That just comes with a sequence package that we ran through a computer. And pretty soon I had a full, like 16-piece band with 7 people. My wife was a champion ballroom dancer, so she choreographed all kinds of stuff. And pretty soon we got better. And then we started playing casinos. Then we priced ourselves out of the casinos because, why would a private company pay us $10,000, $15,000 when they know that the casinos are paying, $2,500? And so we stopped taking the Muckleshoot and the Tulalip and all that. And then we started working up into these corporate amazing gigs. We played for 10,000 people at Key Arena. I'm looking up, says Katy Perry's here next week, and I'm just going, well, this is cool. But then we got hired by Eddie DeBartolo, who owned the San Francisco 49ers. He's in the NFL Hall of Fame now as an owner. And he brought us out to his ranch at Whitefish, Montana. And so we're playing I'm looking out from right about where you're sitting is Joe Montana, Jerry Rice, Randy Cross, the late Dwight Clark, all these 49ers and their wives. And so we make friends with the DeBartolos. They have us down to their annual gala down in Tampa, where they live in Florida during the year. And there, we're getting in the limo with Jerry and Marlee Matlin, who was the best actress for Children of Lesser Gone, with Pam Grier, who was Foxy Brown in the 70s, the black actress. And we're just hanging with these people. And we went from a horrible little toilet band, that couldn't end a song on time, to this amazing production with our own sound company. We got flown all over North America. We were sent up to Northern Alaska to play for an oil man's convention in this huge hockey rink, and they said, no cell phones. Well, why not? You'll figure it out. Well, all these rich oil men were there with people other than their wives. So, no photos. Oh, okay. Well, I got you. But the money was crazy too. I mean, it was, and they'd pick up your flight in your hotels.
This is all why you're working at Boeing.
Yeah, and that was one of the reasons I didn't want to. Oh, sorry. One of the reasons I didn't want to get into the whole too far into the management thing is because this afforded me the opportunities to go out and do these kind of things, which I knew I was eventually going to want to do. And, but it was not an instant success. It was a good 10 years in before we were really.
Yeah, most people would have given up.
Oh, yeah. And that would have been reasonable, very reasonable to quit. And most musicians jump from thing to thing, project to project, because they just can't stay with it. And I go, if you stay with me, you do what I tell you to do. See, musicians think it's about them. It's about my music. Nobody cares about your music. It's about the customer.
Right.
This is a business. And if you're customer in and you have them on stage with you and you give them light up maracas and tambourines to join in and come up on stage and bring the CEO up on stage and where they can put him on YouTube. And it was a completely customer in experience. And so we got hired to work at amazing jobs. These musicians are going, well, I'm a better musician than you. Like, yeah, but you're not a better businessman.
Right.
And if musicians would just figure that out, they could work. They could work. But no, it's about me. It's like, no, it's nothing about you. Nobody cares about you.
Yeah. It's like when I'll get people that say no to the podcast because they're afraid of online backlash. And in my mind, I'm thinking, you're not that important.
No, nobody cares.
And no one will care. Like, think about the Will Smith slap, right? Everyone's moved on with their life. So unless I meet someone that's just a crazy billionaire that acts like he's not, it's like, you're interesting, but not so interesting enough where someone's going to care about you for more than 2 seconds.
Right. Now, if your brand depends on a certain thing and you screw that up completely, that's one thing. But Yeah, people don't. They don't. They're really concerned with their own lives and what they're doing.
Yeah, and I don't, I have no ill will towards them, but some of their excuses are just interesting because it's like, oh, the online backlash. It's like Elon Musk's voice is out there, Joe Rogan's voice is out there because they're afraid, oh, someone's gonna take my voice and use. And it's like, dude, you're not.
Yeah, no worries.
That was trying to.
No worries there.
That was trying to like put you in a compromising position because you're just not worth the energy.
No, it
Because
isn't easy.
there's plenty of other people who are worth going after, and I guarantee you're very low on that list.
Do you run into a lot of that? People saying no for that reason, or
I've gotten more than you would expect. And they'll be like, "Oh, I'm not a social media guy," and I'm like, "You don't have to be. You're just sitting in a chair
it's a chatting.
and you're having a conversation."
Yeah.
But again, I'm not so like, because it's a hobby for me. I'm not gonna try to hard sell someone.
Oh, yeah.
I'm not like some guys want me to sell them on it. Like this guy, he texts me and he's like, I'm in a blah 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 type of relationship and we've gotten some blah blah blah. And I just said, oh, if you're not comfortable, that's fine.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So it's funny because they want me to like engage in
Yeah.
selling them. And it's like, you're either gonna do it or you're not.
Right.
You're either at a place in your life where you realize you have something to give back.
Right.
And if you're not, cool.
Yeah.
I'm gonna move on with my day. So it's interesting the feedback I get. And they, some people, and this is a valid one, well, I'm not a very good communicator. Right. That's what they may say. And it's like, that's what I tell them, it's I'm asking you about your life, right? I'm not asking, hopefully you are confident enough to at least speak about your own life because you should be an expert at your own life. But, and I also get it. It's not normal for someone to come up to you and be like, tell me your life story. So yeah, I get a lot of no's. I'm used to rejection. That's part of the game.
Yeah.
Or maybes or in the future. But I know that, and I'm sure you know this, it's like the more you do something, if you do it enough and you stay in the game long enough, 10 years,
Yeah.
eventually it'll hit a breaking point. And with the internet, things can exponentially move a lot faster than they would have prior to the internet.
What's interesting, these people that you're talking about, it reminds me just kind of the idea that there, I think of basically two kinds of people in the world. The first kind of person wakes up in the morning and asks the question, what's going to happen to me today? What's going to happen? And the second kind of person wakes up in the morning and asks the question, what am I going to get done? And that first question, what's going to happen to me, is very passive and reactive and almost fear-based. You can feel them covering their heads going, oh dear, what's going to happen? Because our brains revert to what's going to go wrong usually. And the second kind of person is coming from more of an offensive mindset. And they're saying, what am I going to get done? And that propels them into forward motion, which is, into productivity, which is where success lies generally. And so I when I'm working as a coach, I'm trying to get people to first thing in the morning start thinking about, you should already have your plan of what are you going to get done, and start thinking about that, and not how it's going to go wrong, and not what's going to happen to you today. What are you going to succeed at? And then they go, well, they may start talking about this or that, and I go, well, let's get you into the offensive mindset where things don't happen to you, you happen to things. You're never a victim in the offensive mindset because things don't happen to you, you happen to things. And if you can put yourself into that mindset, you're always moving forward. And you may not always do the right thing, but you're making progress. And if people can turn their attitude around to that kind of a thought process and just catch themselves being aware enough to go, oh, I'm worried about this or that, I need to be thinking about what I need to get done. There it is. It always gets back to what am I going to get done? And when you can bring that back and your target is what you're going to get done, then you're always moving forward.
So if you don't want to talk about this, you don't have to, but I'm curious, with your first relationship, you were married for a period of time and it ended. What do you think caused that to end?
Well,
because divorce is a big thing.
Oh yeah, it is. And
is there something you could have done to prevent it?
Oh well, yeah. Now I got married.
Not get married?
Now I got married in the first place.
So
it was 5 years in. I knew 5 years in I should have got divorced, and I waited another 10 because I was chicken.
Wow.
And so
was it a compatibility?
It was
Because some people you shouldn't get. There's some people in life you just.
yeah, I mean, it was, we actually were kind of fascinated with the other person because she was not at all into sports. And I kind of was like, so she was curious about that. And she was into, she was very cerebral and intellectual. Uh, and, and, and it was basically a couple of young, horny people, you know, and it just went to, and we were both running residence halls at Illinois State. And so we had that in common. So we had, you know, all these different issues that would come up that we had in common. And yet we were very different, which made us fascinating to each other. And what you want to actually look for is a partner who has more in common than not in common. And we didn't have that much in common. So
in your relationship when you were married together, especially when you moved out here, was there a lot of conflict and turmoil?
no, when we should have fought more. We were both, I think, afraid of talking. And we both loved to read, and we were both always busy, and I was working out and she started working out a little bit, but interestingly, I'm all about health. She smoked.
She smoked.
She smoked, and
smoking was a thing back then.
She did a little of this, you know, and that was a thing back then, and then too, and I just didn't do it, and I didn't care. But at least she'd go outside to smoke most of the time. But she was much easier to tolerate when she smoked, because when she tried to quit, she was just like, "Oh God, please go back to smoking."
So it didn't seem like you had a very loving relationship.
Well, we were kind to each other because we're kind people, and we took care of each other the best we could. But it was just a bad fit. She had different kinds of neuroses. I'm sure I have my own issues, but she had kind of I think almost an agoraphobia in terms of she was always worried about what people were going to think about her. And I go, "You've got a master's degree. You're speaking to large groups. You're good looking and talented." But she was always worried about, like, which dress am I going to wear? They're going to judge me if I pick the wrong one. I'm like, or which dress should I buy? I go, "You're making a fortune. I'm making a fortune. Why say we buy the rack?" You know, you know, and these kind of things. She would nitpick on the small, and I'm just like, this isn't even an issue. It's not even a problem. So by the time we got to the end of it,
And you didn't have kids during that time?
no, we didn't have kids, and I think she had just started to want to about the time we split up.
I mean, that's impressive to go that long without.
Yeah, and I understood the responsibility of having children. One of my pet peeves right now is everybody having children before they can afford them and before they're even mature enough to raise them. We get all these 18 and 19-year-olds with no job, you know, having children, and it's like,
Well, they're having sex, and
yeah,
that
and
leads to.
who's going to raise them?
Yeah.
You know, and thank God for grandparents, you know, and it's just, so I was very cognizant of, if I have a child, I'm raising it. So when I got married to Brooke, she had 3 kids and 2 older daughters who were almost out of the house when I got there. But I officially adopted her 6-year-old boy and raised him as my son, and he is officially my son.
Do you have any of your own produced kids?
No, I have no biological children of my own, which is probably good given the gene pool. But but I was a very attentive father. And
Before we get to there, though, I do want to talk about how your first relationship ended.
Mm-hmm.
Was there some major conflict, or did you guys finally sit down and say?
I was the one who ended it, and I just said, I can't do this anymore. I just cannot. I felt stifled. I'm miserable. The difference between her and
Because you're mid-30s now?
that was
almost
something
late
about early 40s. And the difference, it was 15 years, and the difference between her and my current wife, I've produced 4 books. I produced a band that ran for 18 years all over North America. I succeeded in a corporate career. I've maintained bodybuilding. I'm a legend to some people. So she did not stifle me from that. She helped me with that.
Mm-hmm.
My last wife was, we don't want to go out. You don't want to go out. You don't want to be, don't. It was like, don't.
Yeah.
And I didn't like, don't. I was like, you know, but I wanted to be sensitive to her and what her needs were. And finally I just was like, I can't do this anymore. And so she tried to guilt trip me and do all that stuff. And I felt horrible. I went to therapy, and in fact, we went to couples counseling first, and she picked a therapist, and And it was I said, do whatever you want. And she picked a woman therapist. And it turns out I would tell the complete truth and she would own up nothing. Nothing was her fault. And the therapist is finally like, no wonder this guy wants to bail, and you're perfect and he's a mess. So I ended up staying with the therapist. She left. And that was enlightening. But I had 30 hours of master's degree in counseling. I knew what therapy was supposed to be. If you're not going to be honest and open up, it's not worth doing. You have to be, there are no secrets. And otherwise, there's no use in doing therapy. But she.
So when it ended, was it painful for you?
Oh God, I felt horrible because she was just angry and in tears and would call me, just berating me, and I'd finally have to go, "You're being abusive, so I'm going to hang up now," and I would feel terrible, but I had to teach her how I would be treated going forward. And my father died and left us some money. I gave it all to her. I said, "You can have the house." We just bought a new
Sounds like you were ready. You were willing to restart life.
Yeah, so I moved to because I felt so guilty, and which I should probably have felt. And the therapist was trying to say you don't need to feel guilty, but I put myself into a 400 square foot studio apartment with a sleeping bag, and I eventually got a futon. I took my car, my clothes, and my books, and that's what I kept. So I was punishing myself.
Yeah.
And eventually then I moved into a 1-bedroom apartment after about a year. And then I started dating Brooke, my current wife. And I hadn't planned to really get married again, but she just had everything. And I'm like going, if I do ever get married, I'm not going to beat this. And to this day, she's like, "I'm sorry, honey, I'm going to say this." She's 69, but she's still her high school weight. She looks phenomenal. I told you she's a champion ballroom dancer. I got to get my game going on that pretty soon because we're going on a cruise next February. It's going to require a lot of dancing. And she's phenomenal. And she's a genius. She's a member of Mensa. She was second in her high school class. She's brilliant, beautiful, smart, talented, a hard worker. She's got her own, she's running her own business as we sit here. She's a CPA, running a CPA firm. And it's like, I can't do better. I'm sorry. I don't mind being alone, but this is a pretty good gig here. I have not regretted it at all. And hopefully I think I've helped her quite a bit as well. And in fact, together, it's just one of those rare things where together you are much better than you were.
Yeah, marriage is interesting because if you get it wrong, life's pretty miserable.
I got it wrong the first time.
But if you get it right, it doesn't just double you, it exponentially increases both of you.
Oh yeah. And
it's not like a 1 + 1 = 2, it's a 1 + 1 = 100.
Yeah.
If you get it right. But if you get it wrong, it's 1 - 1 = -1,000.
And I remember I watched your podcast with Nancy, the 72-year-old bodybuilder, and she would define love, and I was thinking about that. Love to me is actually the ability and or willingness to allow the person that you care for to be what they choose for themselves without insisting that they satisfy you. In other words, my wife and I give each other space. Is that what you want to do, honey? You go for it. She's going to Italy with my son at the end of the end of this month, and I'm not going. Number one, I'm not ready to go anyway, and I wasn't sure I even wanted to.
Yeah.
So, but if that fulfills you, you go. And she's the same with me. I could have never gotten these 4 books written.
Yeah, let's look at these.
I could have never gotten these done with my old wife. I mean, because Brooke was content to let me go sit in the other room and write and, be by myself for hours on end and research and do all the things I had to do. That's her right there. And
that's you?
And that's me. That was that was probably about 10 years into the band, 10 or 12 years into the band. And that's Doug Plank, who was a famous Chicago Bear. And he and I wrote that.
Are these books on Amazon?
Yeah, they're on Amazon, Barnes & Noble.
Nice.
You can get those, but I wanted you to have those.
Oh, appreciate it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Thank you.
And
I'll put these in the show notes as well.
Okay, yeah, great. And did you get the pictures I sent you, by the way?
I did. I'll put it in the video.
Okay.
Yeah, I didn't respond.
It's been a real run, and Brooke has been a great blessing. And we had our problems, and we've had, but we could actually have these disagreements. Where in my first marriage, I couldn't, and now that I'm older, I'm just like, hey, whatever.
Yeah, if it's
You just get to the point where you do you, and I'll support you. And if you get to that point, because I see all these relationship people online who are really smart, a lot of them, but it's always they're talking about you've got to communicate your needs, and well, maybe you shouldn't think about my needs. It's always about my needs. Well, what about their needs? And if you took the focus off of your needs and spent a little bit more time on their needs, it's like they used to counsel us to say, write all the definition of the person that you want to be with and what she looks like and how smart she is and all these different things. And I'm like, and then focus on that, concentrate on that, and she'll show up. No. Write those things down, but then write down the person who she would want to be with, and then be that. Who do you have to be to attract that? Because we forget about me. It's like I don't need to show up. I just need to focus on this other person. It's like, no, you can get whatever you want with a little bit of courage, a little bit of personal development, and just go out there and get after it. Man, there's no shortage of women out there. There's a lot of them who need to bring more to the table. There's a lot of young men that need to be more to the table. I'm sorry, it's just true. But if you concentrate on bringing what you can bring to the table, you're going to attract something far better than you might imagine. And that's where the focus should be.
So you've been someone that's put a lot of time and effort into personal development.
Yeah.
When did you realize that was something that you should? Was there an aha moment in your life where you knew, I'm the one that can influence the change that's going to occur?
Yeah, I think in the beginning,
because you said you were immature at one point.
Yeah, I was, but I think when I got into the college master's program for counseling, and that's one of the things they taught a lot of rational thinking and about being responsible for yourself, and I'd started to read a guy named Wayne Dyer, who passed away a couple of years ago. And his first book was called Your Erroneous Zones, and his second one was called Pulling Your Own Strings. And they're still on my top 10 reads of people recommending books. And he got into some more spiritual stuff later on. He wrote probably 12, 15 books total. And those were good books as well. But those first two were grounded. It's like evidence-based, theory stuff that really works. And it was personal responsibility. So that I read those when I was probably about 20, 21. And then I got into the master's program, and then I was totally hooked into personal development because I realized that was the way to, you want to get girls, that's the way. You want to get jacked, that's the way. You want to get smart, that's the way. You want to reach the upper limits of your genetic potential, that's the way. So
have you always been a reader throughout your life?
Oh God, yeah. And part of that was growing up in Chicago because it was safe. Yeah, I could sit in the house reading. But my dad had all these sports books. And when I was 3, 4, and 5 years old, I couldn't read. And I'd pull them down and look at all the pictures. And I go, God, I can't wait till I can read. And my mom said, well, in the first grade, they're going to teach you how to read. So I came home crying after the first day of first grade. And she goes, what's the matter? And I go, I can't read yet. That's like, so I was driven to read. I read everything, anything. I was voracious. And when I got divorced, I didn't get a TV. And I would read 1 or 2 books a week. And then the laptop was just starting to come into. I'd always written, but it was a typewriter. It's horrible,
Slow.
And laptops. Oh man, you can save the stuff you've written, and oh my God, this is crazy. So I continued reading voraciously, and then writing, and then I got hooked up with a guy named Richard Makowitz. Excuse me, he was a retired Navy SEAL who was the host of the Discovery Channel show Future.
How'd you get connected with this guy?
And this is a great lesson for people too. And then he hosted Spike TV's Deadliest Warrior. He passed away a couple years ago of brain cancer. But I got hooked up with him because he wrote a book in like 1999.
Oh, I think you told me you wrote a book review or something?
Yeah, called Unleash the Warrior Within. And I wrote a review on Amazon when Amazon was just coming into play. and I put it on Amazon, and I sent him a hard copy through the mail. Just, hey, I did this for you, and I thought your book was great. He called me. I ended up going down and visiting, going through his 3-day martial arts class, and then I ended up going. He moved to Texas, and then I went down and spent a week with him in Texas as he was writing another book. I was helping him with that. I mean, it's phenomenal who you get, and then you meet other SEALs through that, and you do some ghost writing for them. And I mean, it's phenomenal what you can get if you just offer something to people of value and you don't ask for anything in return.
Yeah.
And it opens up doors. And if you can provide, figure out how you can add value to somebody's life, and don't ask for something. It's like, well, I did this and I want you to do such and such. Can you just, no. Just keep giving them stuff. Help. Did you see this article about you? Did you see this? Oh, this was written about you. Did you see, and now everything's online, and you can.
You know who Gary Vee is, right?
What's that?
You know who Gary Vee is?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
His whole mindset of give. And then Alex Hormozy, you've heard of him. His mindset is, I will never ask.
Right.
Like his flex is, I will give so much that they will ask me, but I will never ask.
Yeah.
Well, so he took Gary's V's and then 100x'd it. He's like, I will just never ask.
Yeah, and I think that's a great way to go. And if you're providing real value, they'll come back to you.
Right.
It's like relationships with your spouse or your partner. You just go ahead, be free. They'll come back to you because they're not getting that anywhere else. Yeah, they're just not. And so it's remarkable what you can do, but you have to develop yourself. In other words, to have something to offer. So every free moment, you should be reading, writing, studying, working out, adding value. So I mean, even meditating has value. I had a meditation practice for about.
I'm assuming you don't watch a lot of movies and TV shows.
I watch sports and news now. I haven't gone to a movie theater in a long time, but I stay up on popular culture just so I can converse with people, so I know what's out there, and who's out there for the most part. It's been really hard to stay up with music, but I don't spend a lot of time. I've made friends in the NFL with a bunch of people, and so I watch pro football, and I enjoy college football, and because I've got time now, I can do that.
Yeah, one thing I try to with my boys is, first of all, we play the sport. So we play basketball. I don't just watch basketball, but I'm trying to show them by examples. We don't have to watch the whole game.
Right.
It's very time consuming.
Yes.
And so we'll generally watch maybe the end of the fourth quarter, maybe the beginning of the first quarter.
Right.
But we're not going to sit there on a Sunday and for 3 hours watch them play a sport, because what happens to a lot of these boys that do that, they grow into men, and now they've dedicated their whole Sunday just sitting there. So yeah, you got to find that balance, especially if you're married with kids.
Oh yeah.
Even if you're a single dude, it's like you said, you can either give 3 hours of your time towards the god of the TV, or you can maybe spend 2 hours of personal development time.
Yeah.
And I think, because again, I try to go back to thinking first principles, and with you and looking at your life, it's and I look at my life, I know I'm not that smart, and I know I'm not 160 IQ, but what I can do is go learn from other people, steal from other people's experiences, read other people's books, but you can't just only do theory stuff.
Right.
You also have to take action.
Right.
So there's that balance of, you are receiving new perspective, you're receiving new thoughts, new ideas.
Right.
But you also have to live life.
Right.
And I think sometimes people get caught up on just one or the other, or not doing either one. Where they're living life, but with minimal direction.
Right.
Or they're taking input. Because I was talking to this gal at the gym. She was 22 years old. And it was interesting because she actually listened to some of the podcasts that I listened to, which I thought was interesting. Because she knew these people. But then I think what happens sometimes, if you get so caught up in watching other people's life and you don't have a life, it can get kind of depressing.
Yes.
And I kind of felt that a little bit during COVID, because you weren't doing much.
Right.
Or I was like, I had to just step away. Because like sometimes if you're just getting too much input, but you're not actually doing anything yourself, it's like, so I feel like I find a healthy balance now where it's like, yes, I have a life that I enjoy living, but I also like getting fresh input from other sources.
Yeah.
So that I'm not the only source of input in my life. Yes, I have my own experiences, but if I want to gain different perspectives or different ideas, or with Alex Ramosi, he's like, hey, he just put out a video. I spent 40 months building my brand. I spent $6 million, so you don't have to. So now he spent 40 months, $6 million, and I can just watch a 40-minute video. I'm not going to learn everything that he learned in that time, but I can, he's like, I did this, this, and this. Cool. So I didn't have to spend I don't have the $6 million, but I also didn't have to spend all the time and energy that he did.
Yeah.
And so I want to learn from guys like that. Like, hey, I went and did the thing so that you don't have to go do all the things that I did, but get the spark notes from it, and then apply it to your life.
Exactly, and it's good that you're setting your kids up for that too. That balance of there's observing and learning from watching, and then there's the doing, the application. And I didn't have this problem when I was a kid. We didn't even have cable TV. We had ABC, NBC, CBS. Generally the educational channel, which in Chicago was WTTW, PBS, and then there was a local Chicago channel. So we had 5 TV channels total in Chicago growing up. So you didn't have sports all day or all night. You might get one game in a weekend, and so you had to go out and play and do stuff.
Yeah, because right now there's NBA playoffs.
Right.
So I could sit there from like 4 to 9 p.m. and watch basketball all day, which we're not going to do. We'll watch maybe 30 minutes at most.
And if you catch, like you said, if you catch the end of the game, you pretty much caught the game.
Yeah, you can always watch the highlights.
Yeah, exactly.
I'm not going to set the precedence up for my kids. Like, yes, let's go sit and watch 6 hours of basketball. Like, I will go play with them. I'm more than happy to go play basketball with them. We have a hoop outside. Let's go do the thing.
Yeah.
Versus watch someone else.
Exactly.
So I think there's the balance there. It's like you can watch someone else live their life and get some inspiration, but also make sure you're out there living life.
Right. Right.
So with your different hobbies, was there times where you were kind of going back to you got divorced, but you knew you wanted these other hobbies? Lifting was always just a lifestyle.
It was always there, yeah.
That's part of, like, me and you're in common there. For me, I expect that to be here's what's so crazy. I don't understand how people can live without working out.
Yeah.
I don't understand that. Like, I've had injuries, so there's periods of my time where I wasn't able to exercise, and I knew I was not functioning I was functioning at a lower level.
Right.
So for me, it just boggles my mind. And I know lots of people do it, and I just like, dude, I can't function. If I go more than 3 days without some kind of physical stimulus, I'm done, right?
Yeah.
So for me, it's like, it's just gonna happen, right? I don't have to think about it. It's not even a motivation thing.
Right.
Like, my buddy texted me and he's like, how do you find the motivation to go to the gym? I said, I have 0, because it's going to happen regardless.
Yeah.
Like, it's just like I'm going to take a shower.
Yeah.
Just like I'm going to go to sleep.
Yeah.
I'm going to go exercise.
Yeah. It's who we are. And yeah, a lot of people say, well, you don't need to be motivated. You just need to be disciplined. And for guys like you and me, it's just easy. It's beyond that.
It's not even discipline. It's
just I work out. Who am I? What do? I work out. That's what I do.
I haven't met someone yet that regrets. I mean, there are levels of exercise. Like, if you're exercising 6 hours a day, that's probably a little excessive. But I haven't really met a guy yet that regrets exercising in general.
No, it's part of a balanced life. It's like, we're not required to. It's not like the 1800s where you had to go out and till the fields and we're not.
If you're doing manual labor as a lifestyle.
Yeah, it's important that we structure something in order that we can keep functioning. And one of the things I was gonna bring up too when you're talking about kind of like what to focus on and the different things and hobbies, and I found since my accident, I used to be able to do like 50 things in a day, and now I'm like doing maybe 25, and it's I've slowed down a lot. But the advantage of that is it's also it's made me reprioritize again, what's important and what isn't, because I'm just slow now. I'm just slow. I get up in the morning and I gotta have my coffee and a little water.
You gotta oil everything up.
Yeah,
You're the Tin Man.
Yeah, I gotta get in the hot shower, and then I go to a recliner chair and put heating pads on my. I go, okay, and all right, I think I can go to the gym now. And I used to be able to sit at the computer and read tons of emails and periodicals and things. Now, if I'm there for 20, 30 minutes, I'd start really aching and hurting. So I can't do that so much anymore. So I've dropped a lot of things, but life isn't really any less wonderful. It's just now your focus has narrowed, and my focus is those values that I mentioned, and what it takes, and being a good partner to my family, and it was really important that I not be just this horrible. I've seen people get injured that become horrible people, because they're bitchy and they're in pain,
Yeah.
and I was really conscious of when I was in pain, not being a jerk or an idiot, and that takes some awareness, because you're just like, because everybody's having this great life, living this great life, and doing all these things, and you're sitting there and you're going, God, my back is going to explode, You're just, and you just smile and go, oh, that's so great. I'm glad you guys are doing that. That's cool. I'll see you later.
Yeah.
But yeah, not getting to work out for 3 months that's brutal.
Yeah.
It was.
I mean, I've had injuries in my life. You see the scars that I have. So I've had periods of time where I was laid up. So not fun. But I do have some selfish questions for you.
Sure.
For myself. But so one guy I did a podcast with afterwards, he's like, man, I wish someone would ask me this question. So the question is, you're someone that I am inspired by, and you're someone that lives a lifestyle when it comes to fitness that I would like to do. So over the years, so I'm 35 now, what physical changes can I expect to happen? Because you're someone that still operates at a level, I'm thinking pre-accident, right? So because I'm thinking right now at 35, is there things I can't do now that I could do at 25? Right now, I still think it's no. I'm not as strong, I'm not as fast, and I'm okay with that. But is there a point in time in my life where I'm gonna have to reevaluate things that I do physically? Did you notice the period of that as the decades went on?
It's interesting, and you're exactly half my age. The only thing that I noticed, and some of that was just losing weight too, is just getting weaker.
And I'm totally okay with it.
Yeah, and I was too. It was because you could still find ways to develop different kinds of strength you can do, and that's when bodybuilding starts to get more interesting, because now you're creating a piece of art, or you're crafting something where it's.
I gave up lifting heavy. Well, this kind of forced me to.
Yeah.
But not yesterday, Monday, I was like, I felt good, and I did 100-pound dumbbells in each hand, and I hadn't done that in a while.
That's good.
And so it's like, all right, I keep doing that. I mean, I don't do it that often,
Right.
lift heavy, but I feel like, see how long I can sustain that.
Yeah, I just think the consistency over time is what's really gonna pay off, and because I didn't really notice any. Shoot, I was sprinting, like probably 2 years ago. I got to Jackson High Track and just start running sprints, and amazing myself in my mid to late 60s, running full out pretty quick. And so it doesn't have to drop off as long as you don't drop off. And I think the key really is the nutrition thing, because there's a tendency to just kind of slide into eating more and not paying a lot of attention to it.
I felt that, and 28 to 34 was sharp decline.
Yeah, and that's and that,
now I'm going back up.
And you can, if you're conscious of it, and you have a plan, and you know what you're doing. No, there really won't be that big a decline. And actually, as I was probably setting my own pull-up records at 68. When I drop my body weight, the lighter you get, the more chin-ups you can get. And now I'm having difficulty just hanging to the bar because I ripped up this one shoulder. But I can still do the Nautilus pullover. Oh, sorry.
Yeah.
I can still do the Nautilus pullover and like rowing stuff, and so it's all about just what you can still do. But
so there wasn't like a sharp decline. It was more of just things will slowly happen and just adjust. Because here's where my mindset is now, is I don't need to be the biggest. I don't need to be the strongest. What I'm looking for is, can I maintain this for as long as possible?
Yeah.
And I also look at a lot of guys who had all these, obviously you had a significant injury. That's different. You had a traumatic injury, where I see guys get all these replacements, right?
Mhm.
And I'm trying to avoid that as well.
Yeah.
And so for me, it's trying to find that balance of, if I can prevent knee replacements, shoulder replacements, hip replacements, I would like to do that. So I'm trying to build a lifestyle that will help me sustain that. So I'm not going to go run marathons,
Right.
because I know that's excessive wear and tear.
Right.
You can do it if you want, right? But you're increasing
Yeah.
your odds of, because I even did a podcast with the guy who did over 100 triathlons.
Yeah.
He's 75. He's like, all the people that used to do it, they're all dead or gone or stopped doing it because guys in that world are very excessive in their training.
It's crazy.
And I met a dude in his late 40s at the gym, hurt his leg. He's like, I don't know what happened. I was like, bro, you were training, you were doing marathons. Like, it's
the wear and tear is,
and so that's the lifestyle I'm trying to build for myself now is, you've probably met, there's a guy at the gym, he's 82, and he's just, he's in there and he's like, I regret I put so much effort into powerlifting that all my joints are just destroyed.
Yeah. There's a balance.
Yeah. So I'm trying to, by talking to guys like you, other guys, bro science plus real science plus all that, just like, if I can maintain this, maybe lose a few extra pounds here and there, right? Maybe have a small season of bulking, I'm trying to cut this month, just build in many of those. But ideally, if I can maintain this for as long as possible, that's kind of my goal.
And you can. And I think the best way to stay out of the hip replacements and the shoulder replacements and the knee replacements is, I think, keeping your weight down some, because there's less wear and tear on your body when you're not.
Yeah, whenever I see a larger guy who's like, oh, I just had this replacement, the first question I ask him is, did they tell you what caused it? Oh, I don't know. And it's like, well, I know.
Yeah, it's
because a lot of people just think that has to happen. That it's a normal part of life, and it's like, I don't think it is.
We're not meant to carry around, tons of weight, and now, unless you're like my buddy Doug, who played pro football for 8 years, he's got titanium shoulders, titanium knees.
Yes, if you're playing sports at a high level, you're going to expect.
That kind of stuff happens.
There's a cost to that trade-off.
But you can expect to improve, I think, in a lot of areas. And for me, one of the reasons I was getting weaker, I didn't notice it so much, is because I was probably, I would get up around 160, 170 pounds, because I wanted big, and I was big. I was a big guy. But then as I got older, I started learning more about nutrition and getting lighter and lighter. Then when I started in the past few years just competing, and then I got really light.
So what were you, like, what was your weight? Because we're about the same height. We could be similar build. What was your weight at my age? You remember?
Yeah, that's about when I started to, was up about 160. And that's about, I started to pay a little bit of attention. There was a guy named Clarence Bass that came out with a book called Ripped. And then he had a series of books, and he was one of the first people that I started looking at nutrition fairly seriously. And then I kind of just dabbled in that, and I probably spent most of my adult life around 150.
Yeah, that's where I'm trying to get to. I ballooned up to 170, right, during COVID, and then I dropped down to 140, primarily through fasting. And just listening today to Dr. Lehman, he's like, I don't recommend fasting, because you will lose a significant amount of muscle. And I remember looking at the mirror when I weighed 140, and I said, where'd all my muscle go? Because all the fasters will tell you won't lose muscle, but then you look at all those people that are heavy into fasting, they don't really have a great body.
Right.
And you learn through trial, right?
Yeah.
So do I regret doing the fasting? No. Did I lose weight? For sure. But then I was able to build it back up. So it's like, all right, cool. Now I actually need to dial this stuff in.
Right.
Right. And that's where I'm at now. And so what are some common or simple things that people can do just to better their nutrition? Or because there's so much knowledge out there now, and there's so much confusion, but like, just break it down for the average person as far as like, hey, if you can nail these down, you're going to be okay.
Well, first of all, I would say clarify what you want to have happen. Do you want to lose weight? Do you want to gain weight? Do you want to gain muscle? Do you want to, what do you want to accomplish?
So let's use me as an avatar.
Okay.
So I am currently 155. I flirt between 154 to 156. and I do want to get under 150.
Okay.
So let's say 149, but I want to keep my muscle.
Okay, that's fair.
I'm at 15% body fat. I just got it measured the other day.
Okay, great. That's good. We want to do what I call, and a lot of people call actually a food recall, where you're just paying attention. You document what you eat for like 10 days, and you take your weight each day, and you figure out what your calories are.
The paper said it was 1,600, but I don't know if that's accurate because I felt like that's pretty low.
That's pretty low.
Because I feel like I would be more than that.
Yeah, I think probably so. But you establish what your weight, the calories you would need to maintain the weight you're at. And that requires maybe some experimenting and stuff. But once you kind of figure that out, drop it maybe 200 calories a day, 200 or 300 calories a day for a week, and see what happens. You'll probably lose a little bit of weight if your activity level stays the same. But for me, and the other thing that's so important is, if you at your age, if you want to be 149 pounds, just make sure that you're getting 149 grams of protein each day. And people worry about, what about fats and carbs? Most of the studies will show you that it really washes out. It doesn't matter that much unless you're trying to be an elite bodybuilder.
Which I'm not.
You don't really have to pay attention.
I would like to get to 12-ish if I could.
And so if you're establishing your calories, you're dropping slightly, and you're getting around 150 grams of protein a day. Now, once you get older, you would probably want to have a little bit more protein because we don't synthesize it quite as quickly. Yeah. But if you can, most people won't even do those things. It's like, I had to track food. I don't want to do that. Now I got to get a scale. I got to, yeah, it's easy and they're cheap. And once you start eating kind of consistently, the only thing you really have to weigh is your chicken or your baked potato or whatever, because your vegetables are the same. Probably if you're having, like, I have a 100-calorie frozen vegetable thing. I have, I eat pretty much the same stuff. So I weigh dry baked potatoes and I weigh a chicken. And if I have bison, it's 400 calories for half a patty. Mm-hmm. I mean, you figure it out over time, but if you just do that slow drip, like I went from 150 to 123 in about 10 months. It was a very
So you did a constant cut for 10 months?
I did a 10-month cut, but it was such a slow drip that I barely...
Did you feel hungry at night? Because that's my issue. Partly because I've been eating more sugar than I should.
Yeah, the last month or 6 weeks, yes. When I got it down to like under 135, then yeah. But you figure that out too. You may have just a smidge of oatmeal when you get up in the morning to get something in your stomach, and you work out, and then you plan it so that you just before you go to bed you have something, and it might be a couple of rice cakes or something, where you actually aren't going to bed hungry. Mm-hmm. But it was a slow drip, and I would increase I did a lot of walking with the lifting. And then I could adjust that because, we can count steps now. And so I got up to like maybe 12,000, 14,000 steps a day because I was competing.
Yeah.
And it doesn't have to be to that level, but I know that it's possible to do. And then I reverse dieted back up to about 135 and maintained that for pretty much throughout the year comfortably, and then took it down again to like 128 for when I won.
So when you went from 135 to 128, how long did that process take?
I gave myself a good 4 or 5 months because I just wanted to, I just try to leave nothing to chance.
Yeah.
But
did you have cheat days, or you really don't practice that?
Not so much, but I really I have a different attitude about food. I enjoy the food that I eat, even if it's bland. And I just stopped. You mentioned what would you tell people about? But I just got rid of the ultra processed food. If it came in a can or a box, I didn't eat it.
Yeah, so this month I'm trying to be really good about my diet. So I even told my kids, to hold me accountable. Because we have some junk food.
Sure.
We have healthier junk food. So we try to get, whether it's healthy or not, at least you feel like it's healthy. So we don't get M&Ms. We get to like the healthier version of it.
Right. Yeah.
Not all the time. So this month, my kids are like, sweet, Dad's not going to eat all the junk food. So it's a win for them. So they're like, what'd you eat last night? I'm like, just like a beef stick or something. So it's fun because now the whole family gets to be part of it.
Sure.
And, you know, I'm not trying to do it was interesting. Fasting was physically easier because your body
Adjust.
your body realizes it's not going to get food.
Right.
But you miss out on all those. Like, yes, I would sit there while my kids are eating. They're like, who's this weirdo over here? Because, dude, the longest fast I did was almost 7 days.
Yeah, that's
So imagine, like, I didn't even show up to some meals because I'm just like, it's not even worth it. And I had all my water bottles. But yeah, so now they're seeing Dad do something else. And so one thing my kids get to see from me is Dad's trying and experimenting with different things.
Yeah.
And so it's like, well, they saw him do the whole fasting thing, and they're like, that's kind of weird. My son almost wanted to start eating less. I was like, hey, you don't have to do this anytime soon. Like, hopefully you never have to do this. But so he's almost started getting a little bit conscientious about it. It's like, dude, you're 11, you're totally fine.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, it's you have to be careful with to make sure they're, you know.
Yeah. So I would say, I think people have an unhealthy relationship with food, and they have an unhealthy relationship with exercise. Some people either do too much exercise, which is you have the injuries, and so it's getting people to have a good relationship with both. Because when I was in the fasting world, you can almost get so caught up that food is just bad.
Yeah.
And I almost like when I started initially getting into that world, you almost feel like I should never eat again. Because they're like, if you eat, you're going to die, you're going to increase mTOR, and you're just like, oh, okay, I'll never eat again. Like, but that's unhealthy, right?
Yeah.
So then it's like, then you listen to Dr. Lehman, he's like, your body needs protein, right? And it's not just for your muscles, but your organs. So now it's like, all right, I'm having a healthy appreciation for food and realizing like, yes, I'm going to optimize protein first, right? Then I'll have my carbs and I'll have my fats, whatever you want it at. But I just don't think people optimize protein enough.
Right.
And there is, I'm sure Dr. Longo with his study of fasting and so you have, and even my brother who's almost 50, he's starting into the vegan lifestyle with I don't need as much protein. And so there's so many competing studies out there that it's confusing, but talking to you, it's like, no, this is how it's like, right? Because when you have people in their 30s and 40s theoretically talking about eating less, eating vegan lifestyle, it's like, but look at their lifestyle and look at their body. If you want that body and you want that lifestyle, then go for it.
Right.
But there are consequences to eating that way.
Yeah, and we know enough now that we should be able to figure it out. And if people will spend time conscientiously tracking themselves and monitoring their own behavior, if something's not working, well, then they can adjust and they can figure it out for themselves. Because we do respond differently, our bodies.
And yeah, that's one thing Dr. Lehman said. He's like, most vegans are 20 to 40 age.
Yeah.
Because they realize it doesn't quite work as well once you get past 40.
Yeah, it's harder to get. You need quality protein when you get older, and but yeah, it's you're right about the balance thing. You need to find a healthy relationship with food and with exercise, and most of us who have competed realize that we're not at our best when we're in competition shape. You know, we're
that's a different level of fitness.
Yeah, it's an extreme, and actually, we're not our best athletic selves, you know, even at that percentage of body fat, but we know it's only for a short time. So it's important, I think, that be said, because I don't think anybody can argue that when you're, you know, 5-6% body fat, you're at your best. You're not. But you look your best, perhaps, but that's what you're going for. So, you know, as an athlete, I would never recommend getting that low. If you're playing football, basketball, which, you know, there's
I would say 10 to 15.
10 to 12. Yeah, I think 10 to 12, 15 is good for most people, and they can sustain that pretty comfortably. And the thing is, too, I mean, people go, what kind of diet do you eat? And I go, well, I eat what I would just call a whole food diet. I just eat food. I mean, if it's fruit or vegetable, and it's a meat, fowl, fish. I eat a lot of fish. But that's, to me, that's food. It's, chocolate cake is not food. It's like, I love it. I mean, I have a sugar addiction.
It would be helpful if we had a different word for that.
Yeah.
Food is such a broad term that
it's like what we consume is whatever it is. And it's like, so
like, what if we labeled it as like plastic?
Yeah.
Like then people would be like, oh, I don't want to eat that.
Yeah. It's just, and I love, man, there's nothing, a good cheesecake, I would eat the whole thing.
Yeah, it's my daughter's birthday tomorrow, so I asked her if she would allow me. She's like, yeah, you can have cake, even though you said you wouldn't. So you got to have those, like, do the things with the family. Yeah. But I have a last few questions for you. Like we said, I'm half your age.
Right.
If you could advise your 35-year-old self on something that really changed your life, what would it be? Something that you picked up along the way?
Well, that was about the time I was getting out of my first relationship, or thinking about getting out of it. I wasn't quite there yet. I would advise myself to take calculated risks. Don't be foolish, but that was where hooking up with my current spouse was so helpful, because if I didn't want to do it, she'd go, come on. And if she didn't want to do it, I'd go, come on. And between the two of us, we usually go forward, and something great would generally come out of it. It was like, she would say yes to things, and I'd go, no, we're not ready for that. But sure enough, when we were done, I was glad we did it. And so I would take more calculated risks, and I would just, as you're doing, being adamant about health, because once that goes away, you have nothing else. And so health is the greatest value. It's the greatest thing you have. We take it for granted. And
was this the first time you've had a serious injury that took you out?
That took me out of commission. Yeah, I mean, when I was a little kid, I tore some knee ligaments playing football, and I had some. I did break my ankle in college once, and so I've had a few things. But even with broken ankle, I took crutches to the weight room, and
I think that for me, it was a blessing and a curse when I got injured in my late 20s, because that showed me the frailty of life.
Yeah,
I don't recommend having serious injury.
Yeah, but
you can use that as like, oh, I better take this serious, because if I don't, I can just lose it like that. So I had my first surgery, and I was out of commission, and that in my late 20s did make me think more about it, as far as like, this can be gone if you don't take care of your body. Yeah. So that was a curse, but a blessing. That was like, definitely made me think more serious about it.
Yeah, yeah. And as far as, my 35-year-old self, I would just say, get clear, get clear on what's important to you, and then pursue that, and it may or may not pay. You got to be responsible. You got to make a living, and that living may not be exactly where you want to be, but if you continue pursuing in whatever time you have what you really love, you might be able to turn that into something lucrative and make it.
And that's kind of where I'm at right now, where I have a job, right? Is it the most fun job in the world? No. Does it help me pay the bills? For sure. And it does give me the freedom. It gives me a lifestyle that I really enjoy.
Yeah.
But that's not my identity. So I find other things like this whole thing, right?
Mm-hmm.
If you would have told me last year, hey, Josiah, you're going to start a podcast, I'd be like, you're crazy. And now it's like, I took the risk, and now I'm able to have very interesting conversations with people, and it's going to lead to things that I don't even know yet, right? Because I haven't met that person, I haven't had that encounter. So I know things are going to happen because of it. So I'm excited about that. But where was I going with that?
Well, you're taking, you're working a job,
yeah,
and you're. It's not exactly perfect, but you're being responsible for your family and the things that you have to take care of, and you don't know where some of these different things will lead.
Yeah. So I feel like I'm doing that, which is great, and so I'm trying to help other men who are around my age, and I'll kind of ask them questions, and if they're unsatisfied with life, it's like, well, what steps are you taking? Because life really isn't that it's not that hard. Like Jim Rohn says, people have already gone ahead of you and lived life. They wrote a book and you can go read it. Right? And he's like, it's crazy that people don't go read it. Right? And he's like, if you don't know what to do in life, and this is where I like, Tony Robbins likes to use the word patterns. Right? So what did Tony Robbins do? He went and took Jim Rohn's pattern. What did Jim Rohn do? He got mentored by someone else. So all these guys, they were all constantly getting mentored, right? And so with the way I see it is, I like to use the word framework. When you're young, you don't have much framework. Right. You haven't had enough life experience, and so you can either through trial and error, and you should probably do both, go live life. If you want to speed that process up, I'm going to go adopt your frameworks. Hey, tell me what your life was like for 30 years. What was your fitness? What was this? And that's mentoring, right? That's discipleship. Right. That's coaching, right? You can pay for it. You can find someone. And so you can read books, you can do personal development. So I'm going to go adopt other people's frameworks. And then over time, I will develop it for myself. That makes sense. And so that's what I would, when we were talking about how do we get these guys to develop, it's like you said, have that person look at their actions. And then at that point, they can realize like, oh, that shouldn't be something that's valuable to me because I'm spending so much time doing it. And so then the next step is go adopt other people's frameworks, right? Like it doesn't have to be Tony Robbins, but I'm sure there's other guys like him. Right. Tony Robbins is a guy that I feel like has really figured out life. Like he is the GOAT of optimizing life, right? So he's one that would probably be beneficial to learn from, but I'm sure there's other guys out there. But adopt someone else's framework, and then over time you can customize it to yourself. Right. And I think that is a way to be at least have some degree of success by going that route. Right. Some people are intelligent enough where they can create their own path, but it's like that's much harder. And I think it's easier to adopt other people's lifestyle and then change it as needed.
You can learn a lot. And what you call framework, I typically call just agenda. Yeah. It's like if you have an agenda and then you have your targets within that agenda and you have a plan to hit those targets, you can progress forward. So many guys, they don't even know if they get sucked into somebody else's agenda because they don't have one of their own, and it's whatever, it's all happenstance. And it's like, well, why don't you get clear on what you want to accomplish, what your agenda is, then what target do you want to hit, and then create a plan to hit that target. And I find that most people's inability to even execute a plan right now is that's what's scary to me about young men. It's like they don't even want to create a plan, let alone execute one. And it's like, well, you just want whatever to happen, and because then you don't have to be accountable to a plan, and it's like, there's a reason you're not where you think you want to be. You haven't decided where you want to be. You don't have a plan to get there. You're not going after a particular target. And you're not moving forward. And one of the things that guys now have to struggle with is just this whole idea of immediate gratification. I can call Amazon and have anything on my door in, less than a day. And it's like, when I was growing up, we'd have to wait weeks, to get something often. And
it's an interesting time we live in. It's never been so easy to be successful, but it's also never been so easy to be so lazy.
Yeah, it's
because I can post something online and tomorrow it could get 1 million views.
Yeah.
Right? Or imagine trying to do that 20 years ago. Yeah. Good luck.
Yeah, you just couldn't. And yeah, so it's a lot different. There's a lot of competing, people competing for young men's attention. And I look at like the influencers and like the Andrew Tates of the world. I think he has a lot in terms of his performance, his development, work ethic stuff. But if guys are listening to him for politics and medicine,
or just how to deal with women,
they're going to be, they're going to struggle. They're going to struggle. And so it's not one-stop shopping. He's got some good points over here, and but he's running around with people like Alex Jones. Oh my God, You know, he says, "Oh, that Sandy Hook was a hoax." You know, yeah, those kids didn't get shot. You know, it's just crazy, and this is who we're listening to, and so it's tough because guys are looking for leadership. You know, and so you know, and that's why we do stuff like this, and maybe one person can pick one thing out of this and use it. So.
Oh. Well, is there a question I didn't ask you that I should have?
I don't think so. I know. I think if people take anything away, it's just that, you know, you can continue to do great things into senior citizenship if you take care of your health.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm going to continue to do more and more and slower and slower probably, but and getting clarity on your values, your principles, the things you stand for, the things that are important to you, and then acting on those will set you up for a much smoother ride, as opposed to just not knowing where you're going or where you're looking. And there's a lot of people out there who can help with that.
Mm-hmm.
So I would encourage them to get whatever help they think they need. So, but yeah, it's been great talking with you.
Yeah, well, I want to say you are inspirational, and you know, from the first time I met you, it's funny when guys are jacked, they get more guys to look at them because they admire the work, because a guy that lifts understands the work it took to get to that body. Right. And so, you know, I look forward to seeing you at the gym and seeing, you know, what the next 10 years of your life look like. Because, like you said, it's this whatever chapter you're in, it doesn't have to just be sitting on your couch watching TV. Because I know you're going to continue to make a difference. And like the sad thing is, you guys should be the influencers of today, right? Unfortunately, it's the kid that's between 18 to 25. Because it's like you said before, it's not the best product that wins. It's the person that markets that wins.
Right.
Because there'll be that musician who may be super amazing, right? So you are, I would say, above average human being when it comes to all the things that you accomplished, but you don't go put yourself on the internet like this 20-year-old kid, but that 20-year-old kid's going to get all the eyeballs.
Right.
When in reality, we should be making you guys influencers. And that's what I was telling Nancy, right? I was encouraging Nancy, like, you can make, just because of your body alone, right? You automatically gives you the authority to be able to influence younger people.
I hope so. Yeah. And I can be found on Instagram at Lee Witt Fit. LEEWITT.
Yeah, I'll put it in the show notes.
And so you can't find me there, and you can go back and look at my body before the accident. I'm about halfway there now. We'll get it back, but it's just a you know, it's like having a PhD and then going back to kindergarten. You know, just start.
And the nice thing is, at least you know the work that it requires.
Yeah.
And you aren't necessarily starting from zero because you have the knowledge.
Right.
To get back to what it is.
And in terms of bucket list, I did it. You know,
yeah.
I did it.
So last question. I'm sure you think about what the next decade's going to be like. Mm-hmm. What are your thoughts on that? 'Cause is it monumental for you? Is that a big thing for you to turn 70, or is it just like another day?
It is kind of a milestone. And I was actually, before I got hurt, I was thinking about trademarking Savage at 70. But now I know now not so much. But being savage is going to be a little different than it was when I had planned. But I'm getting a little bit more politically active, working with Senator John Lovick and some of the Democrats out here. With my political science degree, I used to be a Reagan Republican, you know, and we stood for personal responsibility and limited government and strong national defense and law and order and fiscal responsibility, and now all that's kind of gone away.
Well, that's good to hear, because I actually want to do a podcast. This is a election year, and so I want to do some type of forum where, because the term Democrat and Republican, those definitions have changed over the decades.
Right. Now the Republican Party stands for insurrection and sedition and gerrymandering and voter suppression and racism and anti-Semitism and QAnon, Jewish space lasers and oath keepers and Proud Boys and 3%ers.
So I don't want to get into this.
So it's like, that was my party, and now it's like, oh, it's not anymore. So it's important, you know, we are at a crossroads. It is a political year, and we could lose democracy if, and maybe that's okay. Maybe it's okay to lose democracy. I prefer that we not, but we'll see. We'll see.
Yeah. So I'm thinking through, because there's another guy I did a podcast with. He was 75, and he was like, "Yeah, me and some friends would get together weekly just to hang out and talk." And I think if the goal would be kind of what the point of this podcast is to show that you can have conversations with other people and realize you have a lot more in common than you realize.
Yeah.
Right. Just
And be civil.
like me and you,
Yeah.
we could talk about fitness all day, every day, because we just enjoy it. You would learn something, I would learn something, and whatever. But it's like, that's just one sphere of life. And so I'm trying to think of how to do a forum where we do get people from different aisles, different backgrounds, but can come together and have a healthy conversation to show that, like, just because someone else believes something differently in that area doesn't mean you now have to hate that person.
Right.
Right. I consider myself an independent. I would align myself more to Patrick Bet-David, and I'm sure you've heard of him, where he's an independent. He's like, I want to be a synergist that's bringing people together, because I can hang out with a guy in his 70s and have a great conversation with him, but I can also hang out with the guy in his 20s and have a great conversation with him.
Yeah.
It's different, but I enjoy both.
Yeah.
Now I'm crossing the aisle and having conversations with women, because I think our society in general doesn't have a healthy, we have so much animosity between the two sexes, because it's very sexually driven, when it's like, at some point you should grow up and you should just have healthy conversations with, like, I love talking to Nancy.
Yeah.
Like, I see her as a grandma, but then I'll also enjoy talking to a 30-year-old. I'm not trying to have sex with either one of them.
Right.
I just want to have a healthy conversation with them, so that people can see that you can have healthy conversations with people, and it's good for you because it changes your perspective. Because now I do have a healthy appreciation for women, for my daughter, for my wife, because I'm having that. So I do. We'll talk later, but it would be fun to still. I'm still trying to think of how to do this forum where we have guys on both sides who can, without anger and spite and name calling, actually have a healthy conversation of, okay, this is what it was like over the decades, but how do we define that today?
Yeah.
And it's not even about the two guys, right?
Right.
Because I would argue they both suck. Yeah. But what does it actually mean today? And so that's something I am interested in.
I'd love to get hooked up with that, because I was born during the first Eisenhower administration. I've been through Korea, Vietnam, assassinations, all of it, and it's just been interesting to watch and to see what's happened, and media has been a big part of it.
Yeah. Well, I appreciate it.
Absolutely.
I'm going to read the books. I enjoy reading. I'm already I listen to a lot of books, but I should get back to physically reading, and I'm going to have my boys start reading books too, like books like this.
Well, I'm glad. I think I think they're worthwhile, and for me, it was just a matter of documenting, trying to document.
I know we're wrapping up the conversation, but I had the idea of writing a book, and the primary purpose of the book is for my kids when they turn 18.
Yeah.
So it's going to be, I'm still thinking through it, but it's like you said, it's giving me meaningful direction, and it's going to be basically like, here's the handbook of the life that I've created, and here's some principles, frameworks that you can adopt in these various topics. So like, because so many people hit 18 and they just don't know anything, right? Because we don't teach them anything. We don't teach them about their body. We don't teach them about health. We don't teach them about money.
Right.
And so I had this idea a few weeks ago. It's like, okay, because I would write something, but it wouldn't go anywhere. But now it's like, okay, I could write a book, right? That I could give to my kids at 18, and then potentially other people would want it, because it's going to go through and talk through about just different things that we all face.
If it's good for your kids, it's good for everybody.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. So I've got 6 years to work on this book, but I'm excited. We'll see how that goes. I've never written a book before, but and having these podcasts with different people, that's giving me different perspectives, different stories.
Just start jotting down notes,
Yeah.
and capture them, and then it starts to organize itself.
Yeah.
And when you think, you know, you have a thought about politics or something that you want to tell your kids, you jot it down, and then you have a thought about health, and then you jot it down, and pretty soon you go back to it, and it all starts to kind of almost organize itself.
Yeah.
And no, you'd be great, because you're learning so much from your own study, and then from these podcasts, and from all the things that you've done, and you're more serious about it than the average person, which is going to put you ahead. So no, I think it'd be great. I would like to read that if you did that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, appreciate it. All right, I'll see you around at the gym.
Yes, indeed. Thank you so much.
I'll have you spot me when I go.
Yeah, okay. I'll try not to hurt you. I'll try to be able to lift the bar.